Welcome to Hawk's Eye on Business. My name is Keith Hawk. In today's show, we welcome Dr. Brian Ceccarelli as our featured guest. Brian will share the interesting story of how a very successful surgeon who built a career and a life of caring for the physical needs of his patients made the leap to forming a brand new mission, another mission of caring, but in a completely different field. He is the founder and leader of It's Time To. We will learn what his very noble purpose is in his new life's work that is built around the proposition of building mutual respect, particularly among our children. He is investing himself and his ideas all over the United States to eliminate some of the ills that threaten the emotional and physical health of our young citizens with his new focus. Today, we will learn about It's Time To from our guest, Dr. Brian Ceccarelli.
1 year ago, I left a successful orthopedic surgery practice to start an organization called It's Time To. I wanted to make a difference in a much bigger way than I was as a physician. And in researching some of the issues that are affecting our youth today, I found that bullying is at an all-time high. Teen suicides are at levels they've never been before, and I wanted to tackle these problems. My vision right now is to be able to reach out to individual schools and give the message that there are people that care about each student. Love your neighbor, help each other, lift each other up in times that we need each other. And have these schools start an organized club called an It's Time To Club, where the students are actually embracing this concept and starting this movement to prevent bullying and suicide in the future. If we could prevent bullying, if we could allow kids to feel comfortable with who they are, regardless of gender, sexuality, religion, race, if we could stop one child from committing suicide, then we've done our job.
Dr. Ceccarelli, Brian, thank you for being here on our show today.
Thank you for having me, Keith.
This is a little different episode for Hawk's Eye on Business. We're not talking about growing revenue. We're not talking about marketing expenses or physical distribution of products. We're talking about something much more personal, and we're delighted to have you here to share your mission. I met you, knew you, when you took care of all three of my sons when they played high school football, and you were a doctor, a successful surgeon. You're not an old man, right? You've got lots of years left. You could have kept doing that, but you made a life choice to say, I'm going to pursue a different path, a different mission. Can you share with our audience really the core essence of the mission that you now carry with It's Time To?
Sure. That's a great question, Keith, and while I really loved being a physician and being able to care for people at that level, and I did it for 30 years, so it was really integral in my life and something I always dreamed of doing. So towards the end of my career, as I was winding down, I really started to get involved with groups that deal with more social issues. There's organizations in Dayton that do a lot of good in regards to bullying and child care and child suicide and mental health issues. And as I started to immerse myself in these venues or organizations, I felt like there was a calling for me to do something even bigger than that and get involved in these organizations. So as more and more things came to light with the hate in our world and the divisiveness, I decided I want to tackle those problems. And that's why I started It's Time To.
Wow, wow, it's a noble mission, no doubt.
It's a big one.
Was there a compelling event? Was there one thing, a light that switched on where you said, I'm going to do this, or how did you get to that point?
Well, I think that Colin Kaepernick really was a divisive person, if you will. But while he was that person, he also brought to light some serious issues that are going on in America. The racism that still persists, the sexism that still persists, discrimination, it's rampant. And rather than doing something divisive, kneeling for the flag and kneeling for the national anthem, that hit me pretty strong. I had a father that fought in World War II, and when he died, they handed my mother the American flag. And I had a brother who fought in Vietnam, and when he died prematurely, they handed my sister-in-law his flag. And I felt that if we could unite the country behind that mission rather than divide the country, then I think we could make headway into solving some of those problems. So it inspired me in a way to take a different path than he did. So that's why I started It's Time To.
Well, I'm really intrigued. We're going to dive into what you're doing and how you're doing it. From the beginning, though, whenever you start something new, it has, by definition, no momentum.
Sure.
And you have to create that momentum. Can you describe for me how you've done that? What forms of communication you've taken? How are you getting the message out there? Because I know now you're becoming an in-demand speaker around the country, especially in our schools. So how have you created the momentum and gotten it out there?
Well, you know, Keith, that's a very good question, and it was very challenging for me because my business model as a physician was go to work every day, do a good job, people will seek you out, and referrals and self-referrals and patient referrals over the year drove my business. Mm-hmm. So when I started this, I was starting from scratch. I had to seek out a marketing person, help me design a website, help me define a mission statement, and it wasn't easy. I think that meeting certain people, such as Jim Place, has been very instrumental in helping me. I've attended seminars that he put on.
Successful high school coach in the area for many, many years. Yes.
And he's a great character guy.
Yes.
And he said, Brian, your mission is very noble, but it's too big. You're not going to change the world, at least not at this point. He said, you need to start smaller. You need to start in your own community. You need to start in your local schools and then branch out from there. So as my business started to evolve, that's kind of what I have really appreciated that he told me, and really where I've started to put my focus is getting into the schools and spreading the message really to who it's most important is our youth of today. Mm-hmm. So that's how it's evolved, and that's where it's going.
Okay. I'm interested in the reactions because I assume they won't be 100% well received, but I'm suspecting you're getting some pretty positive reactions. I know you brought some letters with you today that I would love it if you wouldn't mind. I know we won't reveal anyone's name that wrote the letter, but if you wouldn't mind sharing one. But I guess the question is really, what have been the reactions of the now thousands of people you've already spoken with about It's Time To?
You know what, Keith, it has been overwhelming, really, and I can't say that I've had any negative reaction to anything that I present. In fact, most times after I present, people will come up to me and say, more people need to hear this. In fact, teachers the other day at one of the schools I went to, is it okay if I mention the school? It was
Sure.
Alter High School, St. Charles, St. Albert's. They all came up to me and said, we need to have the parents hear this as well. Because really when you think about it, when I give the presentation to the students and the teachers and administrators that are there, my goal is for these children then to go home and talk to their parents about what they saw and what they learned. And I just got a call today from a parent on the way here that said, hey, my daughter was so moved by what you did, she wants to start a club at her school. Another student said, you know, I'm suffering from anxiety and depression. What you told me really inspired me to tell my story, because I do have testimonials on my page and my web page, and we give testimonial presentations when I speak at schools, and they're very powerful and impactful. And I think what it teaches the students is we're all in this together. We all have issues. We all have problems. We all are trying to row in the same direction, and the more we row in the same direction, the sooner we're going to get there. So some of the feedback that I've received has been, like I said, overwhelming. And I just picked this letter up today, and I haven't even had a chance to review it, but I probably have maybe 100 letters here. And this one says, "Dear Brian, your presentation meant a lot to me because a lot has happened in the past week. One of my childhood friends tried to kill themselves this past week. It has really opened my eyes, and your presentation helped me learn words mean a lot to people, and you should pay more attention to what you say. I really appreciate you coming out and making us aware of the situations that teenagers do not take seriously. Sincerely, Carolyn." Here's another one that says, "Dear Brian, you are an inspiration. I love what you are doing. You are changing and saving lives. This is a serious matter, and you are starting to tackle it very well. I hope and pray that you succeed even further in what you're doing. Again, thank you so much. You are changing the world for the better."
You gotta, if you're looking, I know this isn't a for pay initiative that you're on. That's the pay right there, right?
This is what it's all about.
Feedback.
And what's so different to me is that I don't think that this is something that you can measure, unlike medicine where I could say, well, I saw 40 people in the office today and I did 300 or 400 surgeries last year. It's a measurable component, whereas here I may impact a student that I don't even realize I impacted, and if it keeps one kid from committing suicide or bullying or committing school violence,
Yes.
then it's done a great job, and that's the mission. That really is the mission.
Well, let's zoom in on bullying a little bit. I know this is a topic that you're very passionate about. I know bullying can take more than one form.
Sure.
Can you give us a sense of how pervasive the problem is, and really what are some of the forms of bullying, and perhaps even what can we do about it?
Well, Keith, I never realized how much bullying is playing an effect in our school till I started doing this. And every presentation I give, I ask children to raise their hand how often they've been bullied, or if they've been bullied, or if they've witnessed bullying. And I can tell you that it's upwards of 80% of students
all the
that I
hands are
see.
going up.
All the hands are going up. And the statistics don't lie. They say that 160,000 kids stay home from school every day for fear of bullying. Now, 160,000 kids missing school every day over a course of a year is a lot of missed school days. And that doesn't even take into account parents that have told me, my child was bullied in the past, so now I homeschool them.
Yeah.
So I think that students, and not all students obviously that are homeschooled, but there's plenty of students that are getting homeschooled for fear of being bullied, and their parents don't want to even take that chance that they're going to be the kid on the bus that gets bullied every day. As far as the different forms of bullying, obviously the repeated taunting, repeated making people feel bad, and sure, there's still the teasing that goes on, but if I tell you, hey Keith, I don't like when you say that and you stop, that's not really bullying. The bullying is when it persists and people start making fun of your race or your weight or your sexuality, and it's verbal day after day, time after time, it goes on and on. Believe it or not, less common is the physical bullying, at least what I've seen in schools and people that I've talked to. And sure, that takes all kind of form, going into the locker room and getting beat up on the school bus, stealing your merchandise. Hey, I took your iPhone or your iPad or your lunch for today. But it goes on so often and so much, and it's sad. I can't imagine going to school every day with the fear of being picked on or bullied every day.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
An awful concept.
It is.
And now it's not just confined to going to school or the schoolyard. We now have electronics that virtually every child has a phone or an iPad or a computer, and they can be bullied electronically, right?
Yeah, and you know, that's a topic in and of itself, but I work with a gentleman who also presented at one of these character days with Jim Place. His name is Stephen Smith, and Stephen speaks about cyberbullying. And he quotes a statistic that says, from the inception of the iPhone in 2007 till today, the rate of teen suicide has gone up exponentially in step with sales of iPhone units.
Wow.
And there's statistics that also support that if children spend more than 2 hours a day on an iPhone, that their rate of depression and anxiety is substantially higher than children that spend less than 2 hours on that phone. And, you know, part of what I do, I like to sit down with children and ask them about cell phone usage and what they think about it. And quite honestly, the last question I asked at one of the schools I went to is, do you feel that your parents are distracted? Because their parents have grown up in the cell phone age. And it's alarming to me that kids say, yeah, when I'm talking to my mom about something, she's rolling through her Facebook page or through her camera roll, and they don't really feel that they're getting the full attention of their parents.
Wow.
And I think that's sad in a day where parents need to know more about their kids and their kids do want to talk to them, that they find it more important to be looking at their phone than their child talking to them.
Yeah, someday you might want to add to your shirt collection and say, put down the phone and talk, right?
Absolutely.
Perhaps.
Absolutely.
Perhaps. Staying on bullying for one more moment.
Sure.
I'm thinking about the effects on the individual. Certainly we know at the worst end of the spectrum is suicide.
Yep.
What are some of the effects of bullying on the individual who suffers from it?
Well, I think it could vary in different circumstances, but from the people that I talk to that have been bullied, I have two stories on my website. One is Ashley's story and one is Jessica's story. And both of these individuals were bullied for different reasons. One because she was popular, one because she was biracial. And both of them tried to commit suicide in high school. Both of them required hospitalization in a mental hospital. The one on Ashley will tell you in her story that to this day she still has trust issues. The Jessica story will tell you that it took her 16 years and hospitalizations and medication and self-help books to finally realize that she was worth something. So the effects are long-term. I think the words hurt, the words stick with students. It seems to be a common theme that even though you stop bullying me, I still have that sense that I'm not worth it. And that's sad.
Long after the bullying ends.
Long after the bullying ends.
Yeah.
And that's why we need to prevent it. We can't say we're against bullying. I am adamant about preventing it from ever happening to anybody. That's my mission.
Yeah, boiled down very well. We talked earlier that there's not statistics like when you were a surgeon and you're always a surgeon, but when you were practicing actively, that you had metrics and here's how many patients and here's how many surgeries and so forth. We don't have that to the same degree here, but have you seen evidence that programs such as yours that have your mission can have an impact, particularly in our schools? What are the signs that a difference is being made?
Well, you know, I'll be honest with you, Keith. I'm not sure that the message is being presented in a way that I'm presenting it.
Okay.
I'm taking an approach of love your neighbor. And I tell students that the solution to bullying is in this room right now. And if you think about it, it is. The bullying starts in that classroom and it can end in that classroom. So I think what I am doing is by my story, by my presentation, by my education of the students, I'm empowering these students to say, I can actually make a difference. Don't
wait for somebody else to solve it. Right?
That's right.
Let's
you are a part of the solution.
Yeah.
And the solution is in this room. Because what I see, and I've heard this when I've gone to schools, and their big reluctance to bring a speaker in, is I'll hear that, yeah, we had somebody in here, and a week after they left, nothing really changed. So I have a mission that I would like to see accomplished. And that mission is, not only do I want to go into the schools to talk to them, but I would like to empower the students to start their own It's Time to Club, where we create chapters, if you will. So each school has an It's Time To Club, where the students could sit down and talk about issues such as diversity and different religions or non-religions that students may be, whether they find a solution to bullying based on their own ideas, or whether they bring in people to talk to them about bullying. So I think, and recently it was in yesterday's paper, as a matter of fact, the Dayton Daily News, where 2 young girls in Springfield started an anti-bullying club, and they brought in a motivational speaker that charged a lot of money to do it, but they raised funds in their community because they sensed that they could help the school. And I applaud those 2 young ladies for doing that. In fact, I reached out to one of them today and said, I would like to meet with you and talk to you about further promoting your
let's
club.
make this thing stick.
That's right.
Yeah, good. Very good. Have you been able to get at the underlying cause of why some people, and I'll say in particular young people, exhibit bullying behaviors? Why did they do it? Why does it happen?
Well, in my research and talking to people that are knowledgeable in this area, it seems like the bully is by nature an aggressive person. So that's one of the factors. Several of the bullies that I've actually talked to that admitted to me about being bullied or being the bully, I asked them, why do you bully? And he said, because I get bullied at home. I get bullied by my older brother or his friends, or my parents, when you call it bullying or beating or whatever, but they learn a behavior because that's what they're exposed to.
Children learn what they live.
That's right. And I like to think that none of us are born mean, none of us are born racist. Right. It's a learned behavior, and I think we have the ability to change that behavior.
Well, you're out there proving it one school at a time.
That's the mission.
What can we as citizens who appreciate what you do but aren't in it to the depth that you are, what can we do to help your cause?
Well, I would like to think, Keith, that not only is this a student issue, and we could see it all over, our politicians, and this isn't at all a political issue, but the way the media portrays politicians anymore, the arguments that you see, I think we all have that choice every day. I like to think that there's a slide that I present, and that slide shows the problems in the world, such as racism, hatred, discrimination, sexism, arrogance, intolerance, and then the solution to those problems is more of a loving person, accepting person, a tolerant person. And when I wake up every day, I say, I want to be on that side of the fence every day.
Yeah.
And you can't be on both sides of the fence. You can't say you're an accepting person and be a racist. You can't say you're loving but intolerant of somebody who maybe isn't just like you, or share your values or your political views or whatever. So I think that to answer your question, what could people do to support this mission? I would love to think that every adult that hears this says, I want my son or daughter to hear this. Mm-hmm. I would love to help. It's time to get into every school in the Dayton community, if not larger, because I think it's an important mission. And because I'm doing this as my own investment, I've taken my own money, I feel very strongly about this. I would like to think that there are other people out there that would like to help this mission. So I sell apparel that promotes positive messaging. When I wear my shirt, I am wearing my feelings. I love my neighbor, and anybody that sees me can approach me and talk to me about it. And I've had people approach me in airports and concert venues, and I try to wear it wherever I go. And it typically does promote a conversation, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Yeah. I just think that people don't feel they can make a difference, and I know that we can all make a difference, every single one of us.
Well, and I believe tell me if I'm incorrect, but I believe I'm correct. You're essentially offering your services free of charge, particularly in the school settings. And it's one thing to drive over to Springfield. It's another thing to fly to Phoenix or Sacramento.
Sure.
And I know you're paying typically those charges too. So.
Sure.
It would sound, and there's no big corporate sponsor behind you.
Not
right?
yet.
You are essentially the sponsor.
That's
and
correct.
The whole product.
That's correct. I'm a one-man show at this point.
On a social media platform, are there places, whether they be websites, Facebook pages, and whatnot, that we would send people who want to learn more about your initiative, Brian?
Sure. It's time2.org.
And it's the numeral 2. It's time numeral 2.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
It's time, the number 2.org. And on that webpage, we have stories about who we are, what we're doing. We're going to add testimonials like these letters that I keep receiving. We have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter page, we have an Instagram page, and all of those are listed at the bottom of the itstime2.org website.
Okay. So if people wanted to either buy some of your apparel that helps support the mission, or even donate to the mission directly, they can go there and find their way to you.
They can, and it certainly would be tremendously appreciated, because I can't think of anything more important than going to a school, and when I get the phone call and they say, the first question out of their mouth is, how much does it cost? And I think that this message is so important that I would like to be able to do this forever without charging a nickel to any school that asks me to come and spread this message.
Wow, fantastic, fantastic. I'd like to get my good friend Bill Gates, if he were my good friend, to learn about your mission.
So would I.
We really appreciate your time here on the show today, Brian. Our time is a bit short, but I want to give you one last opportunity, if you
Sure.
could. Do you have any final thoughts that we haven't covered that you would want to share on this important topic before we wrap up?
Well, I think the most important thing that I would convey to people watching the show is, if you have students, if you have kids, talk to them. Because what I'm finding out is students that are being bullied frequently don't tell anybody, out of shame, out of embarrassment. Sure. And
not even the parents, right?
Especially the parents.
Yeah.
And these are the people that go on to suffer in their own little world. Yeah. And that's been conveyed in some of these letters. One of them spoke very much about, now I know that other people have these problems, I'm going to seek out a teacher and tell them what's going on in my world so I can get the proper help. So I would reach out to every parent and say, look at the website, sit down with your kids, watch some of the videos that are on there. There's probably 5 or 6 videos on there that are very impactful, and have a discussion with your child. Ask them if they're having any of these situations. Ask if there's something you could do to help them cope with that situation. Because we certainly don't want to get to the ultimate end product of bullying sometimes, which leads to teen suicide.
No. Fantastic. We could go on for a long time. I suspect we'll
We
find
could.
other venues to do this, or maybe bring you back to Hawks Eye On Business.
Well, thank you,
as
Keith.
we're further down the road. But Brian, thank you so much for being a part of this.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
More importantly, thank you for what you're doing.
Appreciate it.
That's it for this episode of Hawks Eye On Business. Clearly a different direction than we normally take when we were diving into the role and purpose of a company. This is a very different kind of mission, but perhaps even more noble than those we typically talk about. So thank you for being a part of our show. Until next episode, bye-bye.